Every now and again, we'll see a best deck rise up in a format, one that all players agree you should be piloting until something is banned from it. We currently see that happening now with Rakdos Scam. This will not be the last time that there will be a best deck dominating a format. In today's episode, we're going to look back at two cards that helped create the best deck back in 2011. Cards that were so scary that they were deemed too powerful to see play when Modern was first created. The first card came off the ban list in 2018 and now sees even less play than Snapcaster Mage. The second card came off the ban list in 2019 and managed to carve out a nice little niche for itself in the current Modern meta. "2011 is such an impactful year in the history of Magic the Gathering. It was the year the Modern format was created, but also the year of the Caw-Blade deck. A deck so dominant it was banned in Standard and pre-banned in the Modern format. To understand how this happened and how these cards were eventually unbanned, we first need to look back at the sets that were released in 2011. We've talked about the powerful cards printed in Scars of Mirrodin block like Mox Opal, but there were other powerful cards released, especially the Equipment Cycle. The Equipment Cycle or Sword Cycle took over the Standard format with Sword of War and Peace, Sword of Body and Mind, and Sword of Feast and Famine. Of course, Stoneforge Mystic, which is the backbone of the current Hammer Time deck in Modern, had a big part to play in this. So how did Stoneforge Mystic and the Sword Cycle take over the format? Well, the best spot for these cards were in that blue-white Call Go deck, which is a play on the words Draw Go that control players so often love. They ran a control package full of Mana Leaks and Spell Pierce, backed up by removal from Day of Judgment and Condemn. The main threats were the Squadron Hawk, a 1/1 flyer that searches up 3 copies of Squadron Hawk and plays them into your hand. So why was the deck so scary, and how are a bunch of birds in your hand going to help? Well, a blue Planeswalker had the ability to brainstorm for 0 loyalty, draw 3 cards, and place 2 cards back on top of your library. You could then shuffle away these birds with your fetch lands. Need to restart this engine? Simply bounce your Squadron Hawk to your hand with Jace's -1 loyalty ability. With the addition of Stoneforge Mystic to bring the deck up to 8 creatures, the clock in which you could close out a game accelerated. The deck got a new name, Caw-Blade, and over the next 4 months the deck began dominating by players using Stoneforge Mystic's ability to place your Sword of Feast and Famine onto the battlefield, equip it to your Hawk, attack, untap all your lands, play Jace, and swing so much momentum in your favor it was hard for your opponent to come back from. To understand how dominant Jace and Stoneforge Mystic were to the metagame at the time, we need to look at the numbers from the ban announcement. In June 2011, both Jace and Stoneforge Mystics are banned from Standard, with 88% of the decks playing Jace making Day 2 of GP Singapore and 70% of Day 2 playing Stoneforge Mystic. It's easy to see why players were so worried about the deck. 2 months later, when Modern format is created, Jace and Stoneforge are kept in check by being on the initial ban list. The fear of them dominating and taking over the meta are ever present in players' minds. The story of Jace and Stoneforge doesn't end there. In 2018, Jace is released from the ban list and allowed to play in Modern. At the time, Jace was able to slot in nicely in those blue-white control lists, which adapted to the power of brainstorming by slotting in 4 Terminus into the deck to try a more miracle style of game plan instead of that traditional just draw go. At Grand Prix Stockholm 2018, 3 of the top 8 deck lists were utilizing Jace. The deck was powerful, but not necessarily because of Jace, it just ran the best blue and white spells available at the time. This helped put a lot of players' minds at ease knowing that Jace didn't have the same threat level that they remembered from 2011. Soon after, in 2019, we see Stoneforge Mystic also become unbanned. Initially, players were trying to slot her into existing decks like Death and Taxes or blue-white control lists. Of course, Squadron Hawk was not able to keep up with the power creep, so you would often equip your swords onto Snapcaster Mage, Stoneforge Mystic, Vendilion Quick, or even Spell Queller. M20 gave players a new equipment to play with known as Colossal Hammer. It wasn't until Modern Horizons, though, that things really began to kick off. Modern Horizons had an interesting impact on Jace and Stoneforge. Cards became more efficient and powerful, and spending 4 mana on a Planeswalker that helps you develop and set up your hand without having much impact on the board became less and less useful. While cards like Esper Sentinel, Urza's Saga gave Stoneforge Mystic new tools to really push the Hammer Time deck into a top meta contender. December 2012 and January 2023, Hammer Time was considered the second best deck in the format behind Izzet Murktide. Nearing the end of 2023, a format dominated by Rakdos Scam, Cascade Beanstalk, and Yawgmoth, Stoneforge Mystic is still seeing play from those few pilots that know their lines and how to work around the current meta. But Jace, on the other hand, is nowhere to be seen. The few blue-white control lists that are still running around rely on faster, more efficient planeswalkers like Narset, Parter of Veils, and Teferi, Time Reveler. Which brings up our question for today. In our current world of the best decks in Modern receiving no changes, what cards that were considered too powerful years ago would be fine in our current era of Modern? Things like Splinter Twin, Deathrite Shaman? Leave a comment down below and let me know what you would like to see unbanned. Also, please let me know if you played during the Caw-Blade era or when Jace was first unbanned in Modern. But that's going to do it for today's episode, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching. I hope you guys like the content. Make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button, spreading the word about all this cool stuff we're doing as we kind of go through the history of Magic, especially the Modern scene. But that's going to be it. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching, and I'll see you guys next game.